So what we are saying is that we are, for the moment, I could see that is the taxation, but like what I was saying is that obviously if somebody who join us will go for another competition, then I would rather cover all the aspects of the competition so that you know what I could help you with. So I start with the beginning, and the first thing is the CBT test, right? So if ever you need, because I suppose that you will have a CBT test, right? Yes. As I would say, all the competitions, they will have a CBT test, and there is a need for passing mark. Having said so, I say to my clients, do the test and be sure that whilst you are, let's say, training at home, get about a 7-8. Why? Because under the stress of the exam and under the difficulty of the exam, you might fall at 5. But if you have less than 7-8, you might fall under 5, and then you don't pass, right? So that is my thought. If you have 7-8, it's good. If not, either you could choose to come to me, and then we check your methods and we check how come that you don't get 7-8, right? So that is a very important aspect, to be sure that in the exam you get your 5 without any risk. So this is the CBT. Second, we have the written test that exists across all the competitions. Now, whether it's called written test or written test in the domain or EUFT or whatever, doesn't matter. It's a written test, right? This is what we have to keep in mind, and it's valid in all the competitions. Now, the written test, I offer master classes every month, right? So, and I will recommend you to do your master class as soon as the competition is announced, like now. So you do your master class so that you can start practicing. Makes sense? So do not expect longer. Do not expect your dossier to be accepted or so. Start immediately, do the master class, start the practice. I have a client who did last 2 weeks ago the competition for crisis management. We prepared, I mean, he came for the masterclass in a written test. Then he came in the individual session when he prepared his file, right? You remember that the file is given 2 weeks in advance. So he prepared his file, and then he came back to me to check the file and to do, you know, whatever optimization I could do with him. And then he went for the written exam, you know, the 45 minutes drafting. And then he said he just drafted what we have done. So it was, I say, easy. You understand what I mean? Obviously, there is a lot of work in it, but it was easy in the sense that he was there and he got, I mean, he had to write this briefing as we prepared it. Makes sense? So it is useful to say, do the masterclass immediately and then start the practice. And then when you get the file, obviously you could take an individual session to check together what you have done and then to optimize the best we can, right? So this is the written test. Then third, you might have an MCQ, right? So MCQ, I'm talking about, how do I say that? An MCQ is a multiple choice question in the domain of competence, right? And we have, in some exams, you have that. Now, for this MCQ, I would say you have to revise the substance, right? So whether it's the direct taxation, indirect taxation, whatever you have, there is substance, there is knowledge you have to revise. So for that, I'm doing master classes on the MCQ so that you know how to revise, because obviously the domains, whatever the domains are huge. So the revision process is very complicated. So what we are doing in this MCQ masterclass is, once, to create a template for your revision, right? So a pro forma, right? A template on how to revise. And secondly, We are talking about how do you know what are the subjects to revise. Makes sense. So these are two things we do in the MCQ masterclass. And okay, so we'll see. My client said that he has done 22, probably out of the 30, which was quite well, because apparently it was very difficult questions. So even though revision, he has done a very serious revision. Now, let's see. I'm talking again about the crisis management. And so this is a test number 2. The test number 3, so no, this, I'm in number 3, number 4. We go for the 10 questions. I don't know, in your taxation, do you have the 10 questions, like the field-related short text questionnaire?
No.
Okay, good. So then you will have an MCQ then. Okay, but I just mentioned these 10 questions, right? Because, for example, the competition that they have now in research, they have the 10 questions. Makes sense. So then I will propose the 10th of February, I will propose a masterclass with the 10 questions. So if you could announce in your friends and enemies that I will do this a masterclass for the 10 questions, so then you could help the colleagues that are doing the research competition. Makes sense? Because the 10 questions is a test that is new, is the first time, right? And nobody knows what it's in that. And I believe that I cracked the code. I believe that I do understand. So this is what I will explain to my clients in the masterclass, how to think about the 10 questions and how to prepare, obviously, before going to the exam, because you're not going to go there, hands in the pockets, and they say, okay, now ask me the questions and I will just respond. No, you have to prepare them in advance. So it's very much connected with your revision of the substance, but there are more aspects to it, and this is what I'm doing in the masterclass. So I mentioned about CBT, I mentioned the written, I mentioned the MCQ, which is the substance test, and I mentioned the 10 questions, right, for the field-related blah, blah. Okay, now, what else you could have in an exam? You might have oral presentation, right? We are talking about internal competitions. They have always oral presentations, and it's oral presentation in the policies. So what I'm doing is, again, masterclass to help you with oral presentations. As there are a lot of internal competitions now running, I obviously, we have it in the commission, and I had just this morning a girl from the Committee of Region, I think, and they have an internal competition as well. So I'm saying that there are several internal competitions running, and in the parliament, I think. So all of them have oral presentations. So then again, I offer masterclass in the oral presentations, and the purpose is to see, obviously, what is the, how I say, state of art in your representation. And then again, I will say, do very soon the masterclass so that you can start the practicing. And then obviously, when we are talking about the written test, or we are talking about the oral presentation, these are things that you can do at your professional life, in your daily professional life. Makes sense? So there's no point to wait until you have your file approved and blah, blah, blah. There's no point. Start today and start applying it in the professional life. Makes sense? So, for example, by the way, this girl from, I had a session this morning in the Committee of Region, and we have done the written test. And then she said her director asked her to do a briefing. So she applied the method of the written test. And she sent the briefing to the director. No, nothing, I say, to correct. And she said it's the first time in her life, because after years, 10 years in the Committee of Region. And she said it's the first time that no correction needed. And this was applying the written test method that I worked with her last week for her competition. So that's why I said it's not only a written test for EPSO, it's briefing writing or speech writing or whatever writing for the management. So do it, apply it, you will get better in your professional life and not only in EPSO. So I was saying oral presentation, and then obviously the thing that will come at least in all the internal competitions will be the interview. And even in the other EPSO competition, at a certain point, you will have an interview. So that's why I offer on the every month the interview, the say masterclass and interview, because in a way or another, you will have an interview. So rather do it sooner and then start to apply it, even if you do, let's say, the practice with your colleagues or your dog or your cat, but start doing the preparation of the interview, the practice of the interview, because you have to get kind of more at ease in it. And so these master classes that I mentioned, I offer them every month. So will be on a monthly basis. And if you are subscribed to my website, then you will get the newsletter once a month. And then in that once a month, you will have the program of the month where you will find the master classes that I just mentioned here. And I think with that, I did the overview. Obviously, if you need individual help, then you contact me directly, and then we will go for individual sessions, which are obviously much more customized, because I will see you and I will see what you do and I like correct what you are doing, which is much more, how to say, customized, personalized. So, having said so, now you are, how to say, invited to ask questions, clarifications, and so on. Yes, David?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, Carmen. It's always nice to see you for the competitions when you give your thoughts and inspire people to apply, not to be afraid to go.
To continue.
Yeah, and one question about these briefings that you mentioned. Would you say that even if there are maybe some standards, but there might be some different ways of doing it for the exam, and also like when you already work at the commission or some other institutions, would you say that for instance, from one unit to the other, it may be different, there might be different versions? Especially concerning the internal structure, how you put the subtitles, numberings, etc.
Right. Now, David, I would not, especially for the open competitions, but even for the internal competitions, I will not make use of the internal standards or templates, or no. I would go with the one that I will give in the masterclass, which is a universal one. And why? Because especially if we are in the external competitions, the fact that you use an internal template shows biased.
Shows what?
Biased. You see what I mean? It's like you have internal information and you're not supposed to have internal information. Makes sense? So because of that, I would not use it. And that, as I said, I never use internal template. I know them because my clients are saying, well, you know, we do this, we do that. Doesn't matter. Just use a normal, let's call it general template, and then you go with that. And by the way, for example, the template that I will give you in the masterclass, yesterday morning, I'll use it with a client director for a presentation. Then I use it now, just before you, with another client for a team building structure. than with a girl from the committee of region on the briefing to the director. So you understand that I use it in so many different situations, and it's the one template. So don't worry, just take the template in the masterclass and then apply it everywhere. Now, Francesco, you see that if you include all degrees, right, and all professional experience, is that your question? Right. So I would say yes, because for me, you have one CV, and that CV has everything in it. Now, if you go for taxation and you have an experience as, I don't know, selling coffee in Thessaloniki, I would say don't put it. Or not Thessaloniki, in Umbria, whatever, Rome. But unless the experience is really outside the domain, you see what I mean, I will keep it. Right. So, because otherwise you will have gaps, otherwise you will have all the diplomas and all the experience that is more or less relevant. Has to be. And that's why I call it one CV.
Thank you.
I don't have different CVs. I have one CV and I go with that. And there is another point that I have in mind is that ever two of the human resources will check your CV and then they find that you have two CVs in circulations in the institutions, it will be a little bit strange, right? So you have one CV when you're a master in philosophy, and then you have another CV when you're a master in IT. I mean, what's that? You see what I mean? So there's it doesn't come together. So put it together, you're a master in philosophy first, and then you realize that you like informatics, and then you put a master in informatics, and finally you did master in taxation. Great. But at least you have one CV. There's no confusion in the head of your recruiters at the end, right? So how are we? Gabriela, do you have questions? David,
No.
are you?
Just one comment, if possible, concerning what you said about the briefings. Just an idea. I think it can happen that not only internal information, but if you work at some other organizations, not at the EU institution, from one workplace to the other, also different methods concerning briefings.
Yeah, but that's why I'm telling you the one universal structure, it goes across and doesn't matter. And especially in competitions, as I said, open competitions, people are coming from so many employers with so many templates. So I don't care about them. I just give one and I go with that. And it's so logical that everybody has to accept it. There is no like the peculiarity of the Greek Minister of Taxation. No, it's just one.
And one more question, if possible, because there was such a competition also in the past about the taxation, if I see correctly. If you have some experience, can you maybe share with us if some specific situations happened linked to this competition in the past?
The question is too vague, David. We have to see. And then not to mention my anecdotes are 1,000, right? Because I have so many clients that throughout the years, then I have a lot of anecdotes. So look, I think that with that, you have a clarity of what I could offer. And then I will meet you in the masterclass or in the individual sessions, depending on your choice. Good. Enjoy your weekend.